10 days after our wedding, my husband became a father with another woman. I discovered it 1 year later when a stranger sent me a screenshot of Chike standing beside a woman and a baby boy. The child had his eyes, his smile, and the same dimple on his left cheek. At that moment, Chike's United Kingdom dependent visa application was already being processed. My original documents were still in his possession in Lagos, and almost every spare pound I had earned in England had passed through his hands. My name is Amara. I was 33, completing a master's degree in Manchester, and I had spent 12 months believing I was building a future for my husband and me. What I did not yet understand was that Chike had built 2 futures at the same time, and he intended to finance both of them with my marriage. The one thing he had forgotten was that his visa had not yet been approved. When I first met Chike at a birthday dinner in Ikeja, he seemed steady rather than flashy. He worked in logistics, spoke softly, and remembered small details. For almost 2 years, he talked openly about marriage, a peaceful home, and the children we would raise. Chike appeared certain about me. Then he changed without warning. One week, we were discussing whether our traditional wedding should be in Lagos or Enugu. The next, his replies became one-word messages. Soon, he stopped answering completely. There had been no argument. I asked whether I had offended him, then went to his flat because his car was outside. He would not open the door. I stood in the corridor for nearly 20 minutes, trying to keep my voice low so his neighbors would not hear me begging. "Chike, whatever is happening, just tell me. I deserve that much." He said nothing. For 8 months, he disappeared from my life. I lost weight, slept badly, and replayed every conversation. My closest friend Ijeoma said a man who could erase me without explanation was not ready to be my husband. My mother called the closed door protection, but heartbreak does not always listen to wisdom. Then I received a scholarship to continue my master's degree in the United Kingdom. I accepted it, partly because it was an opportunity I'd worked for, and partly because Lagos had become full of places where I expected to see Chike. I moved to Manchester and began again in a student flat that was colder and smaller than it had looked online. Money was tight, but for the first time in months, my life was moving forward. 2 months after I arrived, Chike called. His name appeared on my screen while I was in the library. My hands went cold, but I answered. "Amara," he said, sounding as though he had been crying. "Please don't hang up." "Why are you calling me?" I made the greatest mistake of my life. He claimed fear and financial shame had overwhelmed him, and that he had withdrawn from everyone, not only me. Then he told me about a sermon by Pastor Nathaniel Bamidele, a Lagos preacher whose messages he sometimes watched online. The sermon was called, "Do Not Abandon Your Blessing." When Pastor Nathaniel said fear can make you release the best thing God placed in your hands, I thought of you, Chike said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I cannot afford to lose you." I asked the question I should have insisted he answer with evidence. "Were you with another woman?" "No." The word came too quickly, but I still had a soft place for him. Chike apologized to my mother, called my friends, and sent flowers to my accommodation. Within 3 weeks, he was speaking about marriage again. This time, there was urgency in everything. "You are abroad now," he said during a video call. "You will meet someone else and I will regret it for the rest of my life. Let us marry in 3 months. Ijeoma was suspicious. "He ignored you for 8 months, then remembered you after you moved to England. Does that timing not trouble you?" I defended him because admitting she might be right felt like admitting I was about to make a terrible mistake. The less noble truth was that beginning again frightened me. Chike was familiar, and I told myself repaired love was safer than an unknown one. 3 months later, I returned to Lagos. Chike wanted only a registry ceremony, and he said photographs should remain private until we had settled abroad. My parents found the secrecy strange. My father asked why Chike behaved as though being seen as my husband was a burden. Chike said he wanted privacy and lower costs, so we agreed on a small traditional ceremony and an intimate church service after the registry formalities. I believed we were compromising. I did not realize he was trying to keep our marriage hidden from a woman who was already carrying his child. On the wedding day, Chike appeared more concerned about cameras than vows. He asked the photographer 3 times when the pictures would be posted and requested that guests avoid sharing anything online. I thought he wanted privacy. The truth was that another woman in Lagos was 9 months pregnant with his child. When the pastor asked whether anyone knew a reason we should not be married, no one spoke. Chike held my hand, repeated his vows, and smiled for the photographs he had tried to prevent. 10 days later, I returned to Manchester to continue my course. On that same day, although I would not learn it until much later, Adeze Nwosu gave birth to Chike's son. Our plan had been simple. Chike would join me 5 months after I travelled. I rented a modest flat and began setting aside money for his application and flight. Then I learned that my current immigration status would not support the dependent arrangement we had expected. I first had to switch into another eligible route and complete the required process. Instead of 5 months from the day I travelled, he had to wait for 9 months. When I explained the delay, the tenderness disappeared from Chike's face. "You deceived me." I thought I had misheard. "How?" "You knew I could not come when you promised." "I did not know. I only confirmed it after speaking to an advisor." "You tricked me into marriage. You were the one who insisted we marry within 3 months. You moved the wedding from March to December." "I asked for December because I had 3 weeks away from university. In March, I would have had only 2 weeks for the registry, traditional ceremony, church service, and preparations." He looked away from the camera. "You knew what you were doing." After that, most of our conversations became arguments about money or the visa. Chike rarely asked how I was coping. He wanted to know when I would switch routes, what documents I needed, and how much I had left after paying my bills. I believed transparency was part of being a godly wife. Every month, I told him what I had earned from permitted part-time work, what my rent cost, and what remained. "Send the balance," he would say. Sometimes, the balance was all I had for food and transport. "Chike, I still have 3 weeks before I'm paid again. You have friends there, you can manage. Things are harder in Nigeria." So I sent it. Some months I survived on reduced food, walked instead of taking the bus, and declined invitations I could not afford. Meanwhile, Chike told relatives in Lagos that he was paying my mortgage in England. I did not own a house. I was renting a small flat whose bedroom window did not close properly. When my cousin mentioned his claim, I confronted him. "Why are you telling people you pay my mortgage? People exaggerate. You are the one who told them." His expression hardened. "Why are you discussing our finances with outsiders?" By the end of the call, I was the one apologizing. In September, my new status was approved, and I could finally support his application. I prepared the documents he required, but because I planned to spend Christmas in Lagos, we agreed that I would bring the originals with me rather than send them. I offered to help him apply for a visitor visa so we could see each other sooner. He refused. "I will not enter Britain as a visitor. If the visa does not allow me to stay and work, there is no point." I should have asked why working in England mattered more than seeing his wife. When I arrived in Lagos that December, Chike did not meet me at the airport. At the flat, he gave me a brief hug and immediately asked about the documents. "Can I put my suitcase down first? I only want to be certain everything is complete." When I showed him the ivory folder, he smiled with more warmth than he had shown me. I spent the next few days trying to repair the distance between us. I cooked his favorite soup, bought him shirts, and suggested we visit friends. He always had an excuse. One evening, while putting away laundry, I found an opened packet of condoms behind a stack of jeans in his wardrobe. They were not the brand we used. Only 2 condoms remained. My knees weakened. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the packet as though it might explain itself. When Chike returned, I placed it on the table. Who have you been using these with? He barely looked at them. They are old. That brand was introduced only a few months ago. A friend left them. An open packet of condoms in your wardrobe? His face tightened. You came into my house and searched my belongings? Your house? I am your wife. That does not remove my right to privacy. He turned my question into an offense against him. When I asked directly whether he was sleeping with someone else, he accused me of bringing foreign arrogance into the marriage and walked out. He returned the following morning and never offered an explanation. Despite the warning, I left the documents with him and returned to Manchester. I feared being called suspicious or unforgiving. Accepting the truth felt like setting fire to my own future. If you enjoy stories where hidden truths finally come to light, subscribe to Secrets Beneath the Baobab. Chike submitted his dependent application almost immediately. For the next 2 weeks, he called constantly, but only to ask whether the Home Office had contacted me. Check your spam folder. I have checked it. Call them. The application has only just started. I don't want any delay. One evening, while I was preparing for a seminar, a message arrived from an unfamiliar Nigerian number. Madam, do you know this child? Below the words was a screenshot from Chike's younger sister Ifunanya's social media status. In the photograph, Chike stood beside a woman holding a baby boy. His hand rested on the woman's waist. A cake on the table read, "Happy first birthday, Somtochukwu." Ifunanya's caption said, "Happy birthday to my handsome nephew. Your daddy is so proud of you." I enlarged the picture until the faces blurred. The child had Chike's eyes, his smile, and the same dimple on his left cheek. I checked the date of the post, then my wedding anniversary. I counted twice. The boy had been born 10 days after our wedding. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and I rushed to the bathroom because I thought I might be sick. The 8 months of silence finally had an explanation. Chike had not disappeared because he feared commitment. He had disappeared because Adeze was pregnant. He had returned only after I received a scholarship and moved to England. The sermon had not brought him back. The visa had. I called Chike. He rejected the first 2 calls and answered the third with irritation. What? I sent him the screenshot. For nearly a minute, he said nothing. Who is Somtochukwu? I asked. You have been looking for trouble. Is he your son? He is an innocent child. Do not involve him in adult matters. I am not blaming the child. I am asking whether my husband has a 1-year-old son whose existence he concealed from me. It happened before we married. He was born 10 days after our wedding. We were not together when she became pregnant. You came back to me while she was carrying your child. You proposed while she was pregnant. You married me knowing she could give birth at any moment. Chike exhaled as though I were exhausting him. Amara, this is not the time for drama. My application is being processed. His choice of concern exposed him more clearly than any confession could have done. Were you planning to bring her and the baby after I sponsored you? He did not answer. Chike, I was going to take responsibility for my son. With my money, in the home I was preparing, using the status I helped you obtain. You are my wife, Chike said. We are supposed to build together. No, I was building. You were arranging who would benefit. His voice rose. You promised to sponsor me. You cannot withdraw now because you are emotional. That word settled something inside me. For a year, he had relied on my fear of appearing emotional, unforgiving, or difficult. He believed shame would keep me obedient long enough for his application to succeed. You are right about one thing, I said. Your application is still being processed. What does that mean? It means I am not too late. I ended the call. That night, I wrote to the Home Office to withdraw my support and explain that our relationship had broken down. The next morning, I spoke to an immigration advisor and a family solicitor about recovering my documents. Chike called more than 30 times before noon. I did not answer. Then my mother called from Lagos. Amara, Chike says you are trying to destroy your marriage because of a rumor. I sent her the screenshot. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her voice became very quiet. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. My original documents are with him, I said. I will collect them. My uncle accompanied her, and a local legal representative was present. Chike first claimed he had submitted everything, but his story changed when he was asked to identify what remained with him. He produced my academic certificates, civil documents, and copies from a locked drawer. My family checked each item against the list I had prepared. By evening, my documents were safe. 3 days later, the unknown sender contacted me again. It was Ifunanya. She admitted that she had posted the birthday photograph for less than 10 minutes before her mother ordered her to delete it. Then, she sent the screenshot to me from a second number. Why? I asked. Because everyone knew except you, she said. Mommy said the baby was Chike's responsibility, but the marriage to you was the family's opportunity. She said once he reached England, everything would settle. Ifunanya was not innocent. She had attended my wedding, smiled in photographs, and accepted gifts while knowing Adeze was close to giving birth. But guilt had finally become heavier than family loyalty. Ifunanya also told me something worse. Chike's mother had visited Adeze after the baby was born and promised that Chike would provide properly once he relocated. The family had not merely hidden the child, they had organized their silence around the expectation that my marriage would change all their circumstances. When I confronted Chike's mother, she did not deny it. You are the legal wife, she said. The other woman only has a child. A wise woman would bring her husband close first and deal with the rest later. Deal with a child? Do not twist my words. Men make mistakes. This was not one mistake. It was a plan. She warned me that withdrawing support would disgrace the family. I told her the disgrace belonged to the people who created the deception, not the woman who discovered it. A week later, Adeze contacted me. Chike had described me as a former girlfriend helping him travel through a marriage that would eventually be dissolved. He claimed our church ceremony had been forced by my parents for appearances. At first, Adeze had chosen to believe him because he had promised marriage, security, and a future for their son. After the child was born, she learned from photographs that our ceremony was more than a private registry arrangement. Yet, she continued seeing him. She apologized, but she did not pretend she had been blameless. I knew enough to ask harder questions, she said. I accepted answers that benefited me. That honesty did not make us friends. I felt compassion for her child and anger at the choices she had made. I established a clear boundary and asked her to send only information relevant to the divorce. She forwarded messages in which Chike promised that once he was working in Britain, he would rent a larger home, bring their son over later, and correct the marriage situation. In another message, he complained that I was taking too long to complete his visa process. Those records went to my solicitor. Chike's application could no longer rely on my support, but there was no instant punishment. There were emails, formal steps, and a slow divorce process separating finances, records, and belongings. Chike tried every method he understood. He blamed fear, then his mother, then Adeze. He said he had intended to tell me after reaching England because the truth would have been easier to explain in person. When excuses failed, he became tender. You were the woman I truly loved, he said in a voice note. Adeze was a mistake I had to manage. I listened once, then saved it for my solicitor. His relatives called me proud. Some said I should remain married because I had already invested so much. That argument nearly broke me because it was the same one I had used against myself. One night, after remaining composed through calls, documents, and legal appointments, I sat on my kitchen floor and cried until my head hurt. I mourned the husband I thought I had. I mourned the children I had imagined. And I mourned the version of myself who had mistaken self-erasure for faithfulness. Recovery was not immediate. For months, I checked every promise for hidden meaning and felt embarrassed that I had ignored Ijoma and sent Chike money I could barely afford to lose. But shame began to weaken when I stopped asking why I had not known and started asking what I would do now that I did. I completed my master's degree and accepted a better job. I rebuilt my savings slowly, beginning with the first £50 I kept for myself without explaining it to anyone. I moved into a brighter flat, replaced the coat I had worn through 2 winters, and learned that peace could feel unfamiliar without being empty. The divorce was eventually completed. Chike remained in Nigeria and had to face the financial responsibilities he had expected my relocation to solve. His family could no longer present him as the generous husband funding my life abroad because bank records and messages told a different story. Nearly 2 years later, Chike contacted me from a new number. "I have changed," he wrote. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." Once, those words had brought me back. This time, I understood them. I had been his best opportunity. The woman with a scholarship, a future abroad, a habit of giving, and a fear of being called a bad wife. What he valued was not only my love, it was my usefulness. I blocked the number. The screenshot did not destroy my marriage. The deception had already done that. The screenshot simply arrived before Chike could turn my sacrifice into permanent access to my life. I used to believe loyalty meant staying until there was nothing left of me. Now I know that loyalty without truth is only permission. I did not ruin my husband's future when I withdrew my support. I stopped him from building it on top of mine. What would you have done in my position? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories from beneath the Baobab.